I call to order the January 31st Airport Committee meeting. We have 10 items on our agenda. I have been asked to pull items 5, 8, and 9. What are the wishes of the committee on the remaining items?
I'll move consent on the remaining items.
Any other discussion on those? Call the roll on those items, please.
Blainer,
Yes.
Hadley, Larson,
Yes.
Rude, Withis,
Yes.
Olson.
Yes. Item number 5 is the runway end identifier lighting replacement phase.
Second.
Okay. Mr.
I have a
Rude?
question on it.
Yes.
Here he comes. This is a general question, and it probably it applied to some of the others that we just went through, but it's on projects at the airport. When we're looking at the engineering architectural fees, generally when we in business, it's what, 10 to 18%. And I'm looking at these fees and such for the real lighting here, for instance, it's almost 30%. So 25% on the one before it, we're running at 20, 25, 30% fees here. How are these fees being presented to us, calculated? How does that happen?
Chairman Olson, Mr. Rude, the fees come in, we have a proposal that's done, and the fees are estimated at that time, and you agree to them at that time when we agree to do the project. So this real project, for example, had these costs and these estimated engineering fees. I can't recall if the engineering fees went up from the time of the proposal or not, but I don't believe that they did. That's if your question is how that works.
Yeah, I don't know, is there a fee schedule, or is this something that you negotiate per project?
Yes, sir. There's it's on a per project basis. There is not a set fee schedule. So this project is obviously different from other projects, and some require more engineering and some require less engineering.
So when you're negotiating, can you reference to some other airports as far as for what they're paying? Is there some reference guide that you can get when you are negotiating these fees, so we know that we're paying the right amounts?
I have not seen a reference guide like that, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. I could certainly take a look at that. What makes the engineering part of these projects, obviously is to meet FAA standards. So, in order to come up with a design or a product or a process that meets the stringent FAA standards, as they're paying the 95% of the engineering fees in here. So, we pay the 5%, the state pays 5%, and the FAA pays 90%. So they go through this process as well and okay things before they progress. And if the FAA would feel that the engineering fees were out of line, they would bring that to our attention as well. And they did not on any of the projects that you have here.
Okay. Thanks.
You're
Thanks
welcome.
for your input. Appreciate it.
Any further discussion on item number 5? Call the roll, please.
Hadley, Larson,
Yes.
Rude, Withis,
Yes.
Olson,
Yes.
Blainer.
Yes.
Motion passes. Item number 8 is the consultant services for rental car concession agreement and quick turn facility.
Second.
And Alderman Lehner?
Well, I was going to pull this at the request of Mr. Feltner, and to paraphrase Mr. Francois, I don't know if he wants to opine on this or just fill us in on the details. He thought it needed some more clarification because I've read through it twice, and it is a little wordy. Sounds like something that Ms. Hendershot would have come up with as an attorney. So,
Wow. We'll let Mr.
Okay.
Felder answer that before we have a fight here.
All right, Chairman Olson, Alderman Lehner, members of the committee, I'm glad you asked that question because I wanted to make sure that we were all on the same page as far as what the recommendation herein is and what we're asking of you today and what we can expect from this work product. There are two issues on this memo, and both are actions related to car rental. And both of these proposals in terms of in terms of consultant services are paid for by CFCs. If you will recall, CFCs are facility charges that car rental customers pay on a daily basis when they rent a car from an airport. So our current CFCs are $3.50 a day. So every time a customer rents a car, they pay that money. It goes into essentially a trust fund that we can't touch for anything other than car rental related activities. So that fund is now sitting at about $400,000. And I think that, previous to my arrival on the scene, I think that you were looking at the possibility of a quick turn facility and using those CFCs to fund, build, and operate a QTA. And that looks like that's not going to happen at this point because the CFCs kind of fell off a cliff, and there are not nearly enough CFCs now to do that. We had in the 2016 budget, in the capital budget, $400,000 for design of a QTA, and I have taken that out. That's in the budget amendment that you have on your agenda today. So there really is no point in us trying to design a QTA that we can't afford to build and operate. So there is another route that you can go with the QTA, and that is to have a third-party design, build, and operate a QTA on your premises. And what we're looking to find out here is if there is any interest in that from the business community, that companies that do this sort of thing, if they would like to take a look at Minot, give us a proposal for what it would take for them to actually come in and build that facility and operate it, and that would relieve the city of having to do that. And all we're looking for is an RFP. So, we'll put out the RFP, we'll analyze the numbers that come back in, and together we'll make a decision about whether those numbers work and whether it's worth pursuing. Maybe it works out great and we can have a QTA. Maybe the numbers don't work out, and we have the kind of the car rental situation that we have today, which is certainly not optimal. But there's no reason why we have to do this now. There's no reason that we absolutely have to do it. But the reason that we have two issues on this memo, the second one being negotiating the car rental agreement, is that our car rental agreements all come due at the end of this year. So January 1st, 2018, we are expected to have new car rental agreements in place. I believe you negotiated these current rates in 2012. That went into effect in 2013, and obviously the business climate has changed considerably between then and now in terms of what car rental companies expected to make here. And frankly, they're paying kind of their minimum, their MAG, minimum annual guarantee, in a lot of cases because they're not making enough revenue to pay above that. So if the car rental companies have a QTA to plan on when they're bidding, they can eliminate certain expenses that they have now. It's a much more efficient way to do business. What they're doing now is that they rent property on Broadway. They employ a lot of staff to run cars back and forth between Broadway and the long-term lot, and they do all their servicing of the vehicles over there in separate facilities. So if they had a common facility on property, likely where the old terminal was, that would be an advantage to them in terms of cost and efficiency. And likewise, we could probably justify keeping the MAG or even raising the MAG. But again, this is an experimental type question at this point. We just don't know until the proposals come in whether it'll make sense for us. I can tell you that this is what Bismarck did for their rental car facility. So they have got a third party operating a QTA down there, and we'll be heading down there shortly to have some discussions with them about how they did this and how it worked for them. But in the meantime, I think it's important that we do both of these things at the same time, negotiate the rental car agreement and get the RFPs for the QTA, because they're very closely linked.
Any questions for the airport director? Seeing none, you can call the roll.
Adlet? Larson?
Yes.
Rude? Withers?
Yes.
Olson?
Yes.
Lehner?
Yes.
Motion carries. Item number 9 is the KLJ Professional Services Agreement for 36th Avenue Northwest Detention Pond.
So move.
Second.
Okay. Mr. Rood, I believe you had a question related to this.
I know you didn't have anything to do with this, but my concern is that we don't have something like this happen again in the future, as to how did we ever do something that would involve the FAA and somebody made a decision to go outside their authority or did not communicate even with, we had an engineering firm hired at the time on contract. So now we have a retention pond that never got FAA approval, and we're having to go back after the fact. And I'm not blaming the engineering department of our city either, because they came to the airport. I just, you got this thrown into your bucket, I guess I could say. But so how are we going to not have this happen again in the future?
Chairman Olson, Mr. Rood, you've summarized it very well. That's what happened. I will say that the city engineering department did come to the airport and ask very specifically what the requirements were for a detention pond, and the airport administration did not do what they should have done in terms of conferring with the FAA on this, and I can't give you an explanation as to how or why that happened. But when it came to my attention shortly after getting here, I guess it was probably July, Deanna Stoddard, who is our operations manager, was informed as well. We both knew right away as soon as it was brought up that this was going to be a problem. So I don't know why it wasn't seen as a problem before. How we avoid this, some of it is just knowing how to do your job, frankly. And I feel pretty confident in it. I'm even more confident that I've got a certified airport planner for an operations manager. So she is well-versed in the rules of how these things are supposed to work. And I'm confident that between the two of us, we could avoid something like this in the future. But that's why you pay professional airport people to run your airport. I suppose we're supposed to know these things. So I can't say that I will never make a mistake, but I hope I don't make one like this.
Have you had any feedback from the FAA on it yet, as far as, are they having a happy day or?
No,
FAA day?
We actually have a, Chairman Olson, Mr. Rood, we actually have a meeting with them coming up, and this is on the agenda. And they have kind of taken it off their radar for the last several months, and we have not pursued it vigorously because they really haven't told us what they are going to require yet. And what's interesting is that the regulations seem to indicate that this, pond should not be there, yet while they're having discussions about Williston's new airport, it has several detention ponds actually on the property at this point. So I think we could successfully argue that if you can have detention ponds on another North Dakota airport, we might be able to to make this one work too. And there are two issues that are going to have to be resolved with this. The first is the safety issue. Is the pond a wildlife attractant, and is that going to be a hindrance to aviation? And we feel very confident with the way that engineering built the pond that that's not going to be an issue. The answer that they got from the then airport administration was correct in that the pond must fully drain within 24 hours, and that meets FAA requirements. So we feel confident if the pond does that, then it's not going to be a wildlife attractant. Engineering researched this special kind of grass to plant around it that is not conducive to feed for wild animals, and we feel like we're going to get eventually we're going to get through this part of it where they say, okay, you can have a pond here. The second part of it is going to be how is the airport compensated for having a city pond on its property. Now, the FAA paid 95 or 90% of the cost of buying that land there, and their expectation is that if we do something with that land, that it benefits the airport financially. So we're going to have to figure out from a compliance standpoint what kind of deal we can make to satisfy the FAA that we've been compensated for the use of that property. And that's a discussion that will come after the safety discussion.
Send them a heck of a bill. Thanks for your input.
Any further questions on this item? Seeing none? Oh, yes,
I have
Mr.
one.
Larson.
Rick, does the airport benefit at all from this pond? Is there some areas of the airport that would get flooded if it wasn't for this holding pond?
Chairman Olson, Mr. Larson, that is a possibility, depending on what the compatible use for that area is. It may be that there would have had to have been a pond there, or certainly 36th Avenue is a benefit to that area. If you were going to develop it and do anything, having 36th Avenue Northwest finished off is a big benefit to the airport. I think probably Mr. Meyer could speak more intelligently about whether how it drains over there, but it's certainly not going to hurt.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Call the roll.
Hadelid? Larson?
Yes.
Rude? Withis?
Yes.
Olson?
Yes.
Laner?
Yes.
Motion carries, and we'll move on to Airport Director's report.
Okay. This is the part where I look at Derek and he comes running up. So it did not snow very much in January, so that was a good thing for us. We enjoyed that very much. I want to start, though, by recognizing one of the committee members here, and a big honor is about to be bestowed upon Mr. Larson, and it really is something that I think we should all recognize, that Don is going to be inducted into the North Dakota Aviation Hall of Fame, and that is a really big honor. And
Thank you. Thank you.
yeah, it's something that is, I think there's 41 members that will be inducted. You'll be number 41, I believe. And North Dakota has a very rich aviation history, and it's one of the things that attracted me to coming here. I'm a self-avowed aviation nerd, and this is a place that really appreciates aviation. And to have somebody of Don's caliber as a go-to person and having so much knowledge about the community and aviation is really a blessing for all of us. So I just want to take a minute to congratulate Don on that.
Thank you.
Okay, so last time I was here, we were talking a lot about snow, and so I just wanted to follow up with you on several of the things that we have discussed previously. Since our last get-together, I've had 2 engineering inspections of the load on the roof. The first one was when the snow was actually on the roof, and then the second one was earlier this week, yesterday, when the snow has been taken off of the roof. And both of those inspections seem to indicate that the roof performed as expected or as designed. So when he looked at it the first time, the joists, metal joists had deflected 2 inches or so under the weight of the roof. We were told that's what they were designed to do. Now that the load is off and they inspected it again, the roof is back in its normal position. So I don't have the stamped engineering report from the second visit yet, but my expectation is that it's going to say that there's no structural damage to the roof at all. That leaves the cosmetic issue of the drywall that cracked, and that's not going to be very expensive, and we're not going to have to pay for it. So that'll be something that's either paid for by the architect or by the construction company, depending on whether it was designed that way and wasn't built that way, or if it was conversely constructed. So that's good news for us. The roof leaks, we had a roof leak in the front of the building where an ice dam had formed. We've had a number of folks look at that and work on it. The difficulty is that the ice dam was going to be there for quite some time. You can't really get rid of it at this point, even though we had some warm weather last week. But we've got the leak contained. It is not leaking anymore at this time. The foreman for the construction company that put this in is based in Salt Lake City and is on a job in Wyoming right now, but is expected to be here this week or next to take a look at it. And then when springtime comes, we'll be able, when the ice dam is gone, we'll be able to affect whatever repairs need to be done. Again, it's a situation that's not going to cost the airport any money. It was either designed poorly or it was constructed poorly. Either way, we're covered on that. So we'll just need to figure out what it is, stay on top of it, and make sure that it gets fixed properly. Last time we were together, you approved the analytics for the exit lane, and I've got to tell you that's worked out brilliantly. The exit lane has not gone off unexpectedly or inadvertently since it's been installed about a week and a half now. We are still testing this to make sure that we feel very comfortable with it before we take away the person at the door there, but I think that's going to be something that we're going to be able to do in the not too distant future. So again, what this is supposed to do is keep people from turning around and walking back toward the secure area from this door that you see here. And we took a picture of this guy, and I didn't realize that we'd get such a kind of nefarious looking person here. He looks like, but it all seems to work pretty well. We also had a very productive month for snow removal. So with the warm weather that we've had the last couple of weeks, plus snow kind of backing off, we've been able to get a lot of things cleaned up. So you may have noticed that the slip road, as we call it, the road that runs kind of north of the airport road there, very narrow, hard to plow, no place for the snow to go. So during some of those storms, we put barrels up, and it just let the snow pile up, and everybody kind of went around to get into the front of the terminal. So we've got that open again. All of the airfield lighting and signs were required to be dug out essentially by hand after we got close to them with plows and brooms. But we had to get out there and dig those out, and so that's done. Team has done a fantastic job on that. Speaking of snow removal, our new snow removal dump truck arrived. So you'll see on the bottom right, kids in a candy store. Everybody is loving their new toy. But this Ops 343 is a dump truck and plow that allows us, the blade is a little bit narrower, so it's something that we can maneuver better on the ramp, around jet bridges, around airplanes, also that slip road. So that is something that we put to use right away and was very helpful in getting our snow taken care of. So now on to the numbers. In plane passengers, we're fairly flat for the last quarter, not changing much. October, November, December, the green line is 2016, and we were at 12,800 passengers approximately for December, which is relatively flat. Load factor continues to be high, a little less than last month, but still north of 80%. The green line being, again, 2016. Just a little bit below, you'll see that the load factor has not changed that much in December over the past number of years. But we've had a really strong load factor year, which is good for business at Minot. Rental car activity. Relatively flat, again, following a trend that we see most years. The gross receipts right about $380,000. Concession, another stellar month. I don't know really what happened in March and why that big spike is there, but we seem to keep having record months except for that March, and I wasn't here, so I don't know what happened that month, but we did really well then. But this is a great month for us in December in terms of concession sales. Oakwells is doing a fantastic job of running that place efficiently and providing good customer service. Last month, you asked to take a look at parking revenue, and so I have put together some slides here. I welcome your feedback on what information you find relevant. But the top bar graph is total parking revenue per month. And so the green bar to the far right is 2016. So what you see going through here is that we have been fairly flat to slightly better than last year in gross revenue. I also wanted to compare that to net revenue because we have a third party that operates the parking lot for us, Republic Parking, and their costs are taken out of the gross, so you can see what our net revenue is. So you'll see on the bar graph or the chart on the left our net revenue, and while it looks like it falls fairly steadily, you'll see that that tends to match the trend above on gross revenue. And then the bottom right, I draw your attention to the last column, the 2016% of gross revenue. So this is what we actually get to keep as a percentage of what's earned. And so obviously we want a high number there. You'll see that December was negatively impacted by snow removal. So we get billed by Republic for their third party to do snow removal. So that's why we're not looking very good there. But we seem to be hanging in the sort of mid-70s in terms of productivity there, if you will. Are there any questions on the parking revenue? Is that what you wanted to see? Okay, you bet. Any questions on anything else related to the airport?
None? All right. Thank you. And with that, we are adjourned.